So thank you all for attending. My name is Xinyue, assistant professor at the University of Tennessee in Knoxville. On behalf of the CPGIS Education Committee and the CPGIS President, Dr. Song Gao, I would like to welcome you to the first webinar of the CPGIS educational webinar series. The theme of this year's webinar series is geospatial big data analytics. And I will be the moderator of today's webinar. And please feel free to send questions to the Zoom chat box during the webinar, and stay muted until the end when we have the question and answers. And sorry about my voice, I'm still recovering from a virus, likely not COVID, but please bear with me. And so today we are delighted to have Dr. Xinyue. Dr. Ye is an associate professor in the Department of Landscape Architecture and Urban Planning at Texas A&M University College Station. He has also has a joint appointment in the Department of Geography, and he is also the director of the Urban Data Science Lab at Texas A&M. Dr. Ye holds the Harold Adams Endowed Professorship on Urban Informatics at Texas A&M. He directs the focus of smart cities and transportation in the PhD program of Urban and Regional Science. Dr. Ye is a fellow of the American Association of Geographers, or AAG. His research has focused on the integration of planning, geography, and computational science. And he has been one of the top 10 young scientists named by the World Geospatial Developers Conference in 2021. His work has been funded by many federal agencies, such as the National Science Foundation. He is also one of the most junior faculty with Google Scholar Edge Index 44 among all the urban planning faculty in North America. And Dr. Ye is the editor-in-chief of the computational urban science, and also the co-editor of the Journal of Planning, Education and Research. He also serves on editorial board of 8 other journals, such as the Cities and Transportation in GIS. The title of his presentation is Interdisciplinary Collaboration and Publishing, Perspectives from both editor and author. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Ye for his presentation.
Thank you, Chilson and Song for.
Stop sharing, yeah, and then you can start sharing.
Okay, let me share. Good evening from College Station, Texas. This is Xinyue. I'm in a faculty in urban planning and geography. First, thanks again for the organization by Chilson and Song for the kind of CPGIS educational seminar series. Today, I will not talk about the geospatial big data analytics per se. However, I will talk about the philosophy behind that and my experience as both editor and author to see how this kind of the trend is going on in the past 12 years. My personal experience. So why I'm talking about the past 12 years is I got my PhD in 2010, 12 years ago. I remembered in that year's April 2010 is an annual meeting of American Association of Geographers. Every year they will invite the AAG honorary geographer to give the keynote. In 2010, the keynote was Paul Krugman. Paul Krugman, he received the Nobel Prize in Economic Science in 2008, and 1 year later, AAG granted him as an honorary geographer. Being an honorary geographer means you are not in the discipline of geography, but you use geographical methods to have some significant advancement in your own discipline. I was a very junior faculty at that time. That's my first year after I received my PhD. So I attended his keynote. I still remembered the title of the keynote is The New Economic Geography, now middle-aged. And in his talk, he did acknowledge many economists like him try to read and understand the work by geographers, especially economic geographers, because I think that's another reason why in the AAG, we saw lots of people who actually are not from the Department of Geography or even didn't get a degree from geography. They come to AAG to learn something from the methods or ideas geographers carry. But he very frankly pointed out, geoeconomists like him read through many these kind of paper. However, too often find nothing along those lines. That does not mean that the paper is by geographer is worthless, but it does mean that there is not a lot of helpful overlap between the intellectual enterprises. So it really shocked me is because I thought Paul Krugman is so famous in new economic geography. He should have read many papers by geographers, but actually to him is he didn't see too much overlapping. So then he acknowledged that which as economists from his perspective really need to look over the fence more often. So in the past 12 years, I started to attend the AAG conference when I was a master student. After I became a faculty. In the past 12 years, I continued to attend AAG meeting every year, no matter physically or virtually, in the recent 3 times and many other meetings. I began to realize interdisciplinary collaboration is not easy, but it's worth it. So today, I will look at the kind of the collaboration from as an editor and the author or collaborator's perspective. I will talk about from the 5 perspectives, how I understand and promote interdisciplinary collaboration and the publication. First, about the publication. So for the publication, I have quite a few experience of journal editorship. More recent years, you will witness there is a broad boundaries and across many paper titles. And when you look at their data, suddenly increasingly larger. The reason is the more and more available computing resources and the data sets. I will talk about it later. And for the co-authors, especially from human geography or economic geography, social science perspective, the author list becomes longer. It's as if it's a biology papers. We have more like people getting involved because deal with the data, clean the data, process data. You have more people play different roles. And suddenly, I will treat the co-authors is also your research network. Later, I will mention that because when you apply for grants, many times they will ask you whether you have any evidence of collaboration. So at this moment, if you are co-authors, that's certainly kind of evidence. So it also becomes a research network in your grant application. And I know previously Professor Xinyue has given a wonderful talk about from editor's perspective, how you submit. So I just use a little bit things get started is because I'm an editor. So if how I will view the kind of the submissions, and when any paper submitted in as an editor, I will check whether the paper is worthy for peer review. The author, I will not read through all these 4 criteria here, but because it looks like so common to everyone, but I want to point out one thing, why now it's increasingly challenging for editors, because who is your journal readers? Will journal readers change over time? Because we have new generations of researchers. So how you balance the traditional readers and the new generation researchers need. Okay, so and also is about the topic. What kind of topic fit into the journal scope? For example, I'm in the editorial board for cities. Cities every year received several thousand submissions. And you can claim everything relevant to data science in built environment is also relevant to cities. So we need to do a quick screening to find out the first criteria is whether it has a scientific merit and a validity. Okay, so definitely from the review procedure, when you submit the manuscript online as the editor, the basic bottom line is if you do not fall within the scope of the journal, it will be desk reject immediately. And even for that, we need to see whether it overlaps too much in the topic with other manuscript in press. Usually we don't want to have so similar academic contributions appear in the same journal. So then we definitely will send out for the reviewers. But this is certainly is not the focus of today's talk. Then I will talk about my experience, why I see that. I have been the editor-in-chief. I started the journal with Professor Hui Ling last year on the computational social urban science journal. And at the same time, I am a co-editor of Journal Planning, Education, and Research, and Statistical Environmental Research and Risk Assessment is a SCI journal. It's more like on environmental modeling and geostats. And the rest, if you look at my editorship, is very much focusing on geography or geoscience, planning, and computing. I also did quite a few guest editorship. Like I pick some representative ones, 10 of that. If you screen through that, it's more like relevant to economic development, social science, policy. So for me, I have the wide experience of dealing with issues, but for all these things together, I have some philosophy behind that is I really want to see some research is policy relevant, data-driven, evidence-based kind of the research products. So for that, I will be linking everything together. You will see my more kind of philosophy in the following slides. And from the computational urban science, because that's the only journal I co-started. So we developed this journal. And for this one, we clearly ask for the intersection of computational sciences and urban science. So from the editor's perspective, we want meet or lead the trends of geospatial big data analytics, especially in the urban built environment. And however, if you look at it, because computational urban science is a new journal, so let's look at some very established journal of planning, education, and research. For many people in geography or geographical information science, you might not know this journal, but in the urban planning and urban studies, it's a very famous journal. It's ranked #1 by journal citation reports, #1 in urban studies, #2 in regional and urban planning. The recent kind of the impact factor is close to 8. And I became the co-editor of this journal last year. And after I became the co-editor, I read what have been published in this journal. Even I just do a very quick kind of the word cloud for the all the papers just published this year. I mean March. I mean most recent issue. All these papers actually were accepted 2018. So in other words, that's 4 years ago. What's the topic? It is. When you look at that, it's very much about education, adaptation, children's neighborhood. Actually, they are very kind of classical and traditional topics in planning, education, and research. After I became a co-editor, I received many submissions. And then I just list some keywords on the left in red: space-time, big data, machine learning, deep learning, open source. So very soon, I think online first is maybe you will see very soon I think after 1 or 2 months, you will see more papers actually will be titled with deep learning, machine learning also coming out from this flagship journal of Association of Collegiate Schools of Planning. So that's a shifting focus or growing need. That's another reason why I was appointed as a co-editor of this journal, to help to process more and more submissions relevant to big data analytics in urban policy and urban planning. That's a trend. Even if you compare to what happened 4 years ago, I mean, March 2022, the issue now published 4 years ago, the online paper. They are still traditional, but now it's become very kind of computing oriented. I have been with a statistical environmental research and risk assessment journal for quite a few years, I think about 10 years with that as associate editor. Only recently, the editor-in-chief told me whether we should accept or review the paper, which is not not using the traditional geostatistical methods. In other words, use lots of machine learning or deep learning methods. You will also see lots of papers came out from this journal using the cutting edge deep learning methods. Not only that, is this journal traditionally is very much a natural science flavor. But because of environmental research in the past 10 years, you will see the more in human data is also kind of more involved. So this journal also taking the review of those papers relevant to human environmental interaction with increasing elements of the human issues. So you will see, as I said, my experience, it becomes more broad boundaries. So then is if my advice, some general advice, certainly is when you want to submit to any of these journals, you really need to submit as if it's your final exam. Then read before submit, and don't copy paste from other places. And certainly you cannot also copy paste from your own kind of the papers or publications. our journals always welcome volunteers to be reviewers. So I think Chosen will do the recording of my talk. So you will see many journals and editor or associate editor. If you are interested in being a reviewer, please let me know. So as I said, is as an editor, I know it's very difficult sometimes to define. I will say that we also need, based on our kind of understanding of the current trends, to address the needs of new manuscripts. So that's many reasons, for example, why I joined the editorial board of Cities. Why I become co-editor of Journal of Planning and Education, because these journals now have increasing submissions of big data relevant to urban data, urban policy. But at the same time, these journals want to keep their original scope, because it's not just a purely a game of playing with data. They certainly want you to have some policy implication. Okay, so you will see now this kind of moving very quickly. So if you really want to decide which kind of journal you should submit it to, and especially how you justify your contribution to the policy, I certainly will encourage you to read their most recent online first papers to check how they interpret themselves. And you can learn from the writing style. So it's important because I have many papers in the, especially in the Journal of Planning, Education and Research, because it's a top journal. Every day I will have got a submission for that kind of the big data thing is coming into my co-editor kind of the task list. Quite a few of them really didn't pay attention to how to interpret the big data, geospatial big data in the context of urban policy. So they will be immediately basically rejected. And for the real, if you have the experience to work with journals, you will notice, especially the top journals, they will give you very harsh comments. Sometimes the comments is several, like maybe for some, we will have dozens of pages. So you really need to control your emotions when you read them. As an editor, we advise our reviewers shouldn't really use some humiliating words in the review, but sometimes if it happened, don't take it personal, because they don't know you. You also don't know them. So pay attention to the academic merits. Get advice to, and as I said, so that's the reason why you sometimes have co-author is a good thing, because you can share the happiness, but also you can share the frustration thing. You don't need a reply to every review. As an editor, I highly appreciate if you can defend yourself, not in an offensive way, right? So, and then from my kind of, I'm not an editor. When I was a very junior faculty, I also started with a reviewer for the other journals, and I also wrote papers and submit, and also get rejected, revise, or resubmit again. I just use my Google Scholar. I count my earliest 8 papers when I became faculty, and very obviously in 2020 I only have one. This is only actually it's a book chapter, only one book chapter, and nothing else in the first year. And the rest are in the 2011. When I read that, I noticed who are my co-authors. I have co-authors from 4 disciplines: economics, geography, planning, sociology. geography, I have these 3 red arrows just indicate they are kind of all the rest co-authors are not from geography. Okay, I highlighted the geography more is because most of my papers are still with geographers. And relevantly, the author list is very short. And most of my co-authors are from my same institution. And I use traditional data. So look at that, I use regional polygon based the aerial administrative level data. And however, this is my recent 8 papers in this year. And for all these red arrows, I will tell you these 5 red arrows, all the co-authors are not geographers. And then I count my co-authors again. There's a lots of more things coming out. And the highlighted, the more in bold color, in bold fonts, computer science, geoscience, landscape architecture planning. These are the 4 major co-authors I work with. And I changed geography to geoscience is because at this time, I'm not only work with my previous when I got my PhD, I mainly work on economic geography and GIS. So most of my collaborators are social scientists or human geographers. But now I work a lot with not only the traditional defined geography, I work with meteorologists. I work with natural science, physical geographer. So I will put it as more like a geoscience. Certainly you will see the author list become longer and from various institutions using big data. If you can easily judge from the title, it's a very kind of the fine scale big data. So it's from my own perspective. And so so then it comes to the data. Certainly now we have the structured versus unstructured data. Many of our big data, why we have big data? Because we have more unstructured data like image, text, video, audio. But at the same time, when we talk about geospatial big data or big data, we certainly have the open data, like we have safe graph data released during the COVID, but we also, remember, we have many restricted access data. Why we need to have the data, to me, the big reason is not to study data just for easy to use, or, oh yes, we have this data available, then we publish a paper on that. We really need to have curiosity, academic curiosity, and especially to me is I want to have the solution. So policy-driven, evidence-based research, we need a comprehensive framework and linking the data together. So this is one of our tools to analyze the urban visual perception. So for that, we not only have the image perception and the computer vision, we also link it to where our audio is, our conversation is. So the text, image, map are all linked together. When you're linking things together, it's interesting for you to view the urban landscape from a comprehensive perspective. A comprehensive perspective is important for urban design. So not only that, we are also gathering new data. I work with the architects in our university. For example, if I show him a picture, and this my collaborator in Department of Architecture will tell me, based on design criteria, for example, he lists 17 criteria from design perspective, how wide work or does not work in flooding kind of the scenario. So this is data created through the conversation. Later, this annotated picture can be utilized for the artificial intelligence driven flooding kind of resilience. And the other thing. I use the Texas EM use it as example. Texas EM is the site for the for Texas leading university in establishing the site for Census Bureau's restricted access data. So previously, I want everyone pay more attention to restricted access data. Previously, I only think restricted access data is only make our big data analytics inconvenient because restricted access, that means you cannot share with other people. You cannot kind of post it online, ask other people to check your transparency of your analytics. However, why is restricted? Because it go to the individual level. Use a criminal justice administrative records system as example, CPGIS. So they tell you how people get sentenced in each criminal justice procedure. So recently, I'm also collaborating on that. It will help us to go beyond the traditional crime mapping, which actually is only look at the from space-time perspective, the snapshot space-time level, but you don't know why the same kind of people got sentenced to the prisons again and again, and or released, where they released to, how the neighborhood context will change over time. So it will be relevant to a bigger need in criminal justice and social work program. So that is when you have linked data, then you will be able to solve more social challenges. So I would say that big data analytics is not our purpose. Our purpose is want to solve the social and environmental challenges. And regarding the tool, as I said, there are two issues. Because I teach programming course to social scientists at ENM, I'm a big fan on treat the code moving from code as text to code text integration. I use a screenshot of my former PhD advisor Sergio Ruiz's book. It's a co-authored book called Geographical Data Science with Python. The good thing for that is this book is totally online and the procedure is transparent and shareable. So I pay attention to the license they use. They use a Creative Commons. And for that, I want to check. It's allowing you to redistribute the materials. It as if you are redistribute the code, but now you are redistribute the text. And the difference between this textbook and other textbook is it is code and text together. So for that is to me is a fantastic way to write the collaborative paper, right? Because for example, you copy it to the Google Colab, and in Google Colab, you can share as if you share Google Docs with someone else to co-write papers. So the tool also become a way for you to collaboration, co-write the data-driven research. And so certainly this tool also become a kind of the platform for you to port many open data online. Like this is one of my students. He utilized OpenStreetMap. It's one of the homework is go to import the text and OpenStreetMap data into that. Then he use that to link with another biking data to analyze how active at the street segment level, how people's how active the students are. Okay, so if I go beyond, so when I talk about tools, certainly we can go one step further. Is there is I don't know how many of you know there is a kind of the author from computer scientist David Garanta from Yale University. The later last century, he published a very insightful paper called insightful book called Mirror Worlds. And in the Mirror Worlds, he pointed out one thing. He said, he envisioned in the future when we use tools to analyze urban phenomena, it shouldn't be, the tool shouldn't be a collection of buttons or packages. He said it should be another world in the, like, we can watch through the screen. So we can modify that. We can test that, then we can bring it back to the kind of like a crystal ball. Is we can bring back to the real world. So that's actually now we know the digital twin, right? So I would rather, when thinking about the tool, is I want to say in the coming decades, the tool is more like a digital twin idea tool. It's not only the click a button, or it's not a collection of packages. And then we come to the funding thing. No matter as a scholar, when you kind of advise students get a research network or move on, I think one thing is very critical to us is funding, because without funding, it's very difficult for us to persuade other scholars to join our collaboration. Let alone, it's very difficult for us to attract top students to work with us. My personal experience in this is my first NSF grant when I became a faculty, and I still remember the title is called Interdisciplinary. I mean, the program call is called Interdisciplinary Behavioral and Social Science Research, IBSS. Now the IBSS already was dismissed, but it existed for several years to promote the interdisciplinary behavior and social sciences. If you read the solicitation need, they clearly ask you is you need to have multiple social behavior, economic science disciplines. So NSF clearly asks you collaboration within the social behavior, economic science. However, after in 2019, actually right after this my grant ends, I saw another grant. It's called NSF Convergence Accelerator, which was released in 2019. And very luckily, I also received one of these, the first wave of this grant. And then if you look at the requirement of this grant again, now they are not only asking you to have the social impact, they want you to deliver open source tools and knowledge products. They also want you to follow on funding and investment. So in other words, you are not only doing interdisciplinary social science research, they want you to make it a highly computing oriented, deliver tools, and even they want you to work with the industry. It totally go beyond the comfort zones for most social science disciplines, because most of social science disciplines do not work like this way. But so that's the reason why it's called a convergence accelerator. So I think there's another labeled interdisciplinary research, because the national scale social challenges need this kind of push. So if we look at the National Science Foundation in the Urban Studies program, list these 5 research questions. For any of these 5 research questions, first reading is very much is urban theory flavor. But the second reading, you will find out many of that without, if there is no collaboration from computational disciplines, it will not be possible. For example, how you can make predictions about the future states of the systems without knowing how to integrate structured and unstructured data. And if you don't have a deep knowledge about the census data, if you don't understand, we have many restricted access data you can use at the individual level. how your prediction can go at the finer scale. And also, yes, so all this, like even like the how you can transfer it from one community to the other community. It's more like nowadays deep learning, we have transfer learning. We also need to prepare for some places without any experience before. For example, because extreme climate weather, extreme weather issues, some cities will witness or suffer from unforeseen kind of the disaster. So can you quickly borrow the experience from the other cities? It's a bigger kind of the challenging thing. And certainly that is very much favored by federal agencies to fund you because it's critical. And last but not least is about the community issue. Because when we talk about community, I would say my experience is there are 4 types of community: academic organization, working groups, seminar series. And it is also on the research and how you use a community engagement to bridge research and practice. And today I always say our webinar series is promoted by CPGIS. It's a virtual organization. I was one of the former presidents of this fantastic organization. So it itself is a virtual platform to promote the interdisciplinary collaboration. And regarding the working group, after I came to E&M 2 years ago during the pandemic, I didn't know most of the people, and most of the people I know each other is from the Zoom. So we came up with the idea is to utilize, because Texas has, by 2050, Texas population will double. We are facing the problem of the shortage of water resource. So then a group of us, if you look at these disciplines from political science, from water issue, geography, from physical science, public policy, we come together saying, let's building a working group to promote the water for livable Texas. So it will also relevant to the mission of our university. So it functions very well. And this year we have recruited several postdocs through this working group and promoting urban hydroinformatics across E&M system. And I, as a lead organizer, I also push the collaboration among my department, the landscape architecture and urban planning, and the Texas E&M Transportation Institute. That's the largest transportation institute in the university level across the United States. And the Texas E&M Institute of Data Science. We build a huge kind of the efforts to promote the transportation data science seminar series using bi-weekly kind of format. And we invite many people and from the on campus, across campus, and from engineering to social policy, and across many disciplines. And through that, many of our students also got a scholarship from the Transportation Institute and or data science. And we also submit several proposals because of the seminar series. And the other thing I want to say is what's the reason why we do research? Is research is not only publish a paper, especially for me, is I consider myself as a geographical information scientist and a computational social scientist. In my past 12 years, I published a lot. Sometimes enjoyed reading the paper in PDF, but I really want to think is how many decision makers and local communities read my paper. How many of that will turn into the actions in the local level and in the policy. So in Texas E&M today's homepage featured my recent research is building the urban digital twin for Galveston is in coastal Texas to help to increase the community resilience. And for that is an interdisciplinary team. And we also utilize our interdisciplinary work to help the local communities to thrive. This in this NS project is not it's not only integrate the elements within social science part, we integrated with the climate, social and physical system in the built environment. Now for that, we have the larger kind of needs that we can lay out the need for each subtopic. And together we will design a resilient future, a shared future. So as a scholar, I think we also need to have the responsibility to commute our research in a plain language to our community. So as a Kinder scholar and adjunct faculty in Rice University, I wrote posts in Kinder kind of the institute. For example, like talk about how artificial intelligence could help and give urban planner, designer the ground level insight into flood resiliency. Because I noticed many urban designers, they have their own philosophy to do the design. You would not expect that they come to read papers in geospatial big data. So it's our responsibility to translate what we learned and our experience to work with them to change the world. At the same time, they are, as I showed some one slide before, is when I work with an architect or local residents, they can also point out in a map of architecture which design criteria will facilitate the flooding resilience or which factor will have a problem. And for that, it will become, to me, it become knowledge co-production. These methods, data will come back to feed back into our model. So I think that's all for my today's talk. So if you are interested in knowing our research of urban data science at the ENM, and you are welcome to scan the code. And I have, as Song and Chosen mentioned, is today we do not have some definite time limit, but I still want to cut here so we can have more minutes to have the discussion. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ye, for the very insightful presentation. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, and so from his perspective as the editor and also serving in so many editorial boards and sharing his perspective, and also from interdisciplinary research from some of the commonly used tools, data, and also funding, and also community. And I'm sure there's still a lot that we can learn from his presentation. And so it's very compact, but hopefully you get some useful information out of that, and to think about how you want to structure your research and how to publish. So next, we're going to open the floor for questions. So if you have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask questions. Anyone? If not, earlier I posted the questions on the chat over there, and I
think yeah, Bing, maybe, yeah, there is one.
Okay, so let me see here.
Thank you for your presentation, Dr. Ye. I'm a graduate student from Sociology Department at Purdue University. You mentioned the collaboration you conducted before with the sociologist. So I'm quite interested about what kind of the research you have conducted with the sociologist before, and what future research you can foresee that could be really interesting and meaningful about the collaboration in the future. Thank you. That's a really wonderful presentation.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your question. And for my collaboration with a sociologist, my wife is a sociologist. So we said the early years, we worked together on crime mapping, criminologist. So because for this, what I learned from the sociology is they are very much looking to how individuals interact with institutions. I will pay more attention on procedures. However, the geographer, or I was mainly trained as a geographer, and my early years is I would rush into a data which has XY coordinates. I think it's an easy way for me to do mapping, and since anything, spatially distributed, certainly you will find out the spatial autocorrelation or all kinds of the spatial relationship. I was very proud of that, but my wife pointed out is saying, yeah, the spatial pattern you saw actually is a footprint of the social network. That's many times the spatial outcome is very much lag behind of the social procedures. So it make me think. So yes, so working with sociologists, I definitely benefit a lot is because the data itself is kind of more like is a social science flavor data. It has XY coordinates, but it itself is a social science data. We do need theories from sociology to help us to adjust that. And at this time, since I also sit in a PhD committee for sociology in our university, I noticed they are paying more attention is to utilize survey data, national survey data into the local area in the final scale to help to for policy relevant research. There is a great need of doing the spatial micro simulation to help us to come up with to how to say integrate the geography and the survey. And I saw there's more need of they are looking to the migration. That's the reason why I mentioned the restricted access data, because restricted access data has many very fine scale people's movement. Nowadays, if we only look at the regional level or even county level, many people's migration or mechanism is very much hidden by these kind of aggregate level data. Going to the final scale data, certainly to sociologists, there's a big challenge because I noticed that quite a few sociology students are not trained in the spatial programming. They have good thoughts, but they cannot easily handle the data. But I don't think there's a shortcoming. That's a thing is, if one person can do everything, it's not a collaborative work. So for me, is I also very much rely on sociologists to tell me some theories I have never thought before. Yes.
Thank you so much for your sharing. So if I want to learn more about the mapping or the spatial programming, do you have any recommendation for the summer courses or other resources?
I think for that is today I have a screenshot of the geographic data science. This is you can go to online to search. It's free to access. That's my former advisor's, a PhD advisor's book. I use that to teach my students. I think it's a very good kind of a book or the open source book to get you started. But I think the best way to really move on this is collaborate with other people. When I was a student, I sit in numerous computer science courses, but I didn't think I really get that because every time after class, I only know some irrelevant classwork until I work with my PhD advisor, because the data and the code he used is actually what my research is on. My research was on. So doing relevant coding, it's critical. So I would suggest is working with other faculty who are friendly to sociology, but is also have good programming skills. So that's, I think, the reason is why sociology students here like to take me. I have several requests from sociology departments want me to join their committee, because yeah, that's true. I can teach them and they can learn exactly what the dissertation need. So then they will learn very fast.
Thank you so much.
Okay, you're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Ye, for the insights. So I sent the link to the text to the book that he mentioned, Geographic Data Science with Python. So you can check it out, yeah, if you want. I also sent another link about leaf map, so you can, if you're interested in using vector data, raster data within the Python environment, and you want to make those interactive, you can check out the leaf map that I created. It has a lot of tutorials and also videos on YouTube. So
I think Cao Rui raised the hand.
Yeah, so you're
hello,
welcome.
Professor. Yeah, thank you for your great presentation. So I'm from the Hong Kong Polytechnic University. So it's impressive that you are doing research in quite different and diverse fields. So we know that it's even not an easy task to reach a publication level in any field alone, actually. So it's really impressive. So my question here is, how do you balance your research in different fields? So thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for your kind of the wonderful question. Many other people asked me this before. I think let me give you an example. When I was in my PhD program, I talked with Arthur Geddes. He's a big name in the field. If you work on spatial stats, you will know Geddes odd stats. I asked him about some of my dissertation topics. He asked me, what do you want to do? I said, I got my master's degree working on something relevant to regional inequality in China. So I want to have a dissertation about comparing regional inequality in China and the US. So he said, for that, he said, what's your career goal? Are you going for economic geography degree, or you want to go for a GIS science? I think one thing is clear is I want to go for GIS science. Then he said, you need to tell us why your framework can not only take the income data like China and the US economic data. Can you think about more broadly why your framework is important for the social science or spatial social science? So then it made me think. Later, I bring this topic again to my PhD co-advisor, Sergio Rui, and I guess again, then I give them a big thing called the comparative space-time dynamics, a case study of China and the US. Then two of them crossed my subtitle saying you shouldn't, you shouldn't folks have some subtitle. You only need to have one title. And it suggested me to use comparative space-time dynamics. So again, they pull me back to the the major issue is how are you only running something as a case study, or you run it as a framework? So it makes me think how to structure everything as a framework. So then I can answer you is, I learned from my dissertation, my research is I need to frame my research as a framework. And later that one idea, I received the National Science Foundation doctoral dissertation research improvement grant, is because I ask fundamental questions. Why we have so many research questions clustered in certain aspects of spatial temporal scales. So now I'm not asking why compare China and the US. I go other ways. Why we have so many papers only talk about a certain aspects of space-time scales. So if I answer that, if it's yes, it's clustered in some way, it's very possible is either the convenience of data or tools. So if not, it's because data is not available, a tool is not available. Then now I have the task for my lifetime journey is I can go into each the framework I have set up saying, yes, because it has not been done. So I do this, or then I move to the other way. But no matter how I move around, it's still under the one big framework. So that's how I justify myself do things in a framework. Then you will not get lost.
Thank you for your answering. So it's very enlightening. I think we should focus more on the questions beyond the disciplinaries.
I think, yes,
Thank you
I think we need to focus more about why we ask research questions. Why we can only ask a certain type of research question, why we cannot ask another type of research questions.
Okay, thank you for your answering. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are a little bit over time, so we'll allow one last question. So if you want to unmute yourself, you can ask the last question.
I think there is one in that box.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe Dr. Ye can choose one
which
to answer.
one?
We have a couple of those here, and so the last one from Juan Ortega. Sorry about the last name. If I misspell, pronounce correctly or not. And so his question is: do you think that could be a great opportunity for developing countries, the geographic data science, to cope with complex problems?
Okay, so I think this question is very broad, but I want to say something is when we talk about developing countries, the impression is sometimes we don't have the enough rich data sets as we have in most developed countries because of the sometimes because of internet connection issues or the other various other like the lack of social media platforms or many other reasons. It comes to another interesting thing in several of my funded NSF projects. We especially conduct research in the what we call data challenged communities. Data challenged communities not only happening in developing countries, also happening in many cities in the United States. For example, if you use social media data, you very easily you harvest lots of social media posts in downtown and in the transportation corridors, and certainly in the decent income areas, in the very poor and rundown places. When you try to harvest the data, what you get is maybe worship and announcements from church or from some advertisements. It's very rare you will get the individual level tweets. There's many reasons. Maybe they didn't subscribe, they didn't have internet at home, right? And for that it means if you bring in these data to the geographical data science, then you get a very biased results because it will always favor people who provide data. Who didn't provide data will keep silent. So deal with that is certainly, I know there is some algorithm to help you to enlarge the, how to say, to make data more representative. There is several algorithms for that, but there's other ways you adding the data to help enlarge the data challenged kind of places, such as what's a geovisual software I just showed in my screen. For that is we help people come into the communities to talk about the communities, to accumulate their kind of the discussions. These kind of data can be utilized to help the data challenged communities which do not have enough data. Yes, so there's many other ways, and in our MS projects, we even also think about is how in the African countries where the internet speed is very slow, and how we can zip the larger amounts of data and then send it out. For that, we work with a computer scientist who deal with these kind of data issues. So there's many ways to deal with that. So I think all countries, all communities deserve the sustainable development goals. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Ye, for the insights. Just to echo what you just said and about some of these issues, and certainly I think it will be helpful to look into, for example, earlier you mentioned about migration. So right now in Europe, because the war between Ukraine and Russia, so it has the largest migration since the World War II, and it'd be interesting to look into how the migration impact the social economic impacts of the largest migration, and see how GIS science can GIS science and remote sensing can contribute to studying this kind of social issues. And okay, so we are over time, and that's thank you once again, Dr. Ye, for the very insightful presentation, and thank you all for.
Thank you, Johnson, and I wish you a very speedy recovery from the
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll meet each other 2 weeks later. Yeah.
Yeah, 2 weeks. So just keep on eyes on our announcement. So I will say announcement in a week or two, and we look forward to seeing you next time. And so have a good rest of your day, and see you next time.
Thank you, Johnson, and so everyone.
Yeah,
thank you.
Yeah. Bye-bye.
Bye.